Close your eyes for a moment, my old friend. Do you remember the sharp, earthy scent of tatami mats warming in the afternoon sun? Or perhaps the distant, melancholic chime of the baked sweet potato cart echoing through the cool evening streets? Those were the comforting sounds and smells of our youth in Showa-era Japan. Today, we are going to take a gentle, nostalgic journey back in time to explore 20 normal things from the 1970s and 1980s that were an everyday part of our lives. Yet today, they are entirely illegal, heavily restricted, or considered absolutely unthinkable. From the smoky, hazy atmosphere of public spaces to the incredible, unspoken trust of our local neighborhoods, we will revisit a beautiful world that has wildly slipped away.
What is one specific, cherished memory from your youth that would be considered completely impossible or illegal in today's world? Please share your personal stories in the comments below and let us remember those golden days together.
Close your eyes for a moment, my old friend. Do you remember the sharp, earthy scent of tatami mats warming in the afternoon sun? Or perhaps the distant, melancholic chime of the baked sweet potato cart echoing through the cool evening streets? Those were the comforting sounds and smells of our youth in Showa-era Japan. Today, we are going to take a gentle, nostalgic journey back in time to explore 20 normal things from the 1970s and 1980s that were an everyday part of our lives. Yet today, they are entirely illegal, heavily restricted, or considered absolutely unthinkable. From the smoky, hazy atmosphere of public spaces to the incredible, unspoken trust of our local neighborhoods, we will revisit a beautiful world that has wildly slipped away. Before we look at the specific things we have lost, let's remember how time itself used to feel. In the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, the world simply moved a much slow, gentle pace. We did not have digital device in our pets, constant redemanding our to engine and instantly connecting us to everyone. If you wanted to see a dear friend, you walked to their house. If you wrote a heartfelt letter, you savored the long, quiet days of waiting for a physical reply. There is a modern myth that life before advanced technology was somehow poorer or less emotionally connected. But we know the absolute truth. Our lives were infinitely richer in genuine human interaction. We looked each other directly in the eyes. We felt the heavy, physical texture of the world around us, from the thick, fibrous paper of train tickets to the rough, weathered wood of our local shrines. Society operated on an unspoken foundation of deep trust and shared responsibility. As we go through these beautiful memories, you might realize that what we truly mourn is not the absence of these specific things, but the loss of that untethered freedom and the warm embrace of a society that trusted us. And now let us remember the hazy, blue-tinted air of a commuter train carriage in the 1980s. Close your eyes and picture the classic velvet green sheets of the Yamanote line, or the pristine white headrests of the Shinkansen bullet train. Back then, lighting a cigarette light in the middle of a crowded train was not just normal. It was an expected daily ritual. You could hear the metallic snap of a lighter cutting through the rhythmic clacking of the train wheels. The rich, heavy aroma of Peace or Seven Stars cigarettes would instantly fill the cabin, mixing with the metallic scent of the railway tracks and the starched shirts of tired salarymen. Every single armrest had a tiny built-in metal ashtray, and the sound of them opening and snapping shut was a constant background percussion. People would sit shoulder to shoulder, silently sharing the quiet intimacy of a smoke after a long, grueling day at the corporate office. Nobody complained about the smoke because it was simply the accepted fragrance of adulthood and hard work. Today, doing such a thing would lead to immediate fines, public outrage, and legal trouble, as smoking is strictly banned on all standard trains. The pristine, odorless carriages of today are certainly healthier, but sometimes one cannot help but miss that shared, smoky camaraderie of the Showa era. Let us take a slow stroll down a dimly lit neighborhood street on a humid August night. The air is thick with the deafening hum of cicadas and the scent of damp asphalt. Just around the corner, glowing like a welcome ring light house in the dark, stands a row of brightly light vending machines. In the 1980s, these machines did not just sell soda or green tea. They freely dispensed heavy glass bottles of premium beer, cans of whiskey, and even bottles of warm sake. There were no digital age verification scanners, no identification cards required, and absolutely no restricted hours of operation. A young child could easily walk up to the machine with a handful of 100 yen coins, sent on a quick errand and by their father, and purchase strong alcohol without anyone batting an eye. You could hear the heavy, satisfying soot of a psychic glass beer, bottle dropping into the metal delivery tray. It was a time built on profound social trust and a sense of community responsibility, where it was assumed that children were buying for their parents. Today, strict underage drinking laws and mandatory identification cards have made this entirely illegal and impossible. The glowing alcohol machines of the Showa era are gone, taking with them a unique symbol of our neighborhood trust. Think back to the golden afternoons spent in the beautiful countryside, visiting your grandparents during the autumn rice harvest. One of the greatest joys for a child in the 1970s and 80s was riding in the open cargo bed of a small white light truck. There were no seatbelts back there, no roll cages, and certainly no safety regulations to speak of. You would sit on a pile of rough, scratchy rice straw, feeling the warm metal of the truck bed beneath your hands. As your grandfather navigated the narrow, winding dirt paths between the flooded rice paddies, the wind would whip fiercely through your hair. You could smell the sweet, earthy fragrance of freshly cut rice and the faint scent of gasoline from the small engine. Every bump in the road would send you bouncing into the air, accompanied by the joyful, unrestrained laughter of your cousins. It was an exhilarating feeling of total freedom, completely exposed to the elements and the beautiful Japanese landscape. Today, strict traffic safety laws make riding in the back of any truck without a fastened seatbelt completely illegal and unthinkable. We traded that wild, wind-blown freedom for necessary safety. But those memories of riding under the open sky remain etched in our hearts forever. Do you recall the distinct, comforting scent of wood smoke that would drift softly through residential neighborhoods on crisp autumn weekends? In the 1980s, almost every single family had a small, personal incinerator in their backyard, often made of concrete or an old, rusted metal barrel. Burning household trash, fallen cherry blossom leaves, and old newspapers was a perfectly normal weekly chore. You could hear the satisfying crackle and hiss of the fire and feel the intense, comforting heat radiating against your face on a chilly afternoon. Often, neighbors would gather near the wooden fence, leaning over to chat about the local gossip while keeping a watchful eye on the flames. We would even toss sweet potatoes wrapped in aluminum foil into the dying embers, waiting patiently to taste the sweet caramel flavor of roasted potatoes cooked in our own backyard.
The smoke would rise high into the twilight sky, a shared signal that the day's work was finally done. Due to strict environmental protection laws and health regulations, these backyard fires are now entirely illegal in urban areas. The air in our neighborhoods is undoubtedly much cleaner now, but we have lost that smoky, communal gathering point that naturally brought neighbors together. Let us remember the long melancholic rainy seasons of our youth, when the gentle patter of raindrops hitting the pavement was the soothing soundtrack of our daily commute. Back then, it was perfectly normal to see two people sharing a single bicycle, a practice of riding double. A mother would pedal smoothly while her young child stood precariously on the rear rack, or two high school friends would glide down the wet street together. Even more remarkably, the person riding on the back would often hold a large, clear vinyl umbrella to shield them both from the heavy rain. You had to have absolute, unwavering trust in the person pedaling, feeling the slight sway of the bicycle and gripping their shoulders tightly to maintain your delicate balance. The rain would drum loudly against the taut plastic of the umbrella, creating a cozy, private little world moving swiftly through the wet streets. It required immense skill and a deep, unspoken physical connection between two people. Today, riding double on a bicycle and holding an umbrella while riding are both strictly prohibited by modern traffic laws, resulting in hefty fines. The streets are safer, but we no longer see that beautiful, delicate balancing act of two friends sharing a ride in the pouring rain. Think back to the echoing, polished wooden hallways of your junior high school. The familiar smell of flowax and chalk dust was always heavy in the air. In the Showa-era, teachers were the revered figures of absolute authority, and physical discipline-wise were duly accepted by society and parents alike. If a student forgot their homework, spoke out of turn, or misbehaved during physical education, it was not uncommon to receive a swift strike to the back of the head, or a stinging slap on the palm from a bamboo sword. You could hear the sharp, sudden crack of the bamboo echoing loudly across the gymnasium floor. We would stand rigidly at attention, feeling the hot flush of embarrassment rise in our cheeks, accepting the punishment as a necessary part of building strong character and resilience. Parents did not complain to the school board. Instead, they often thanked the strict teachers for keeping their children on the righteous path. Today, corporal punishment is rightfully illegal and strictly banned in all Japanese educational institutions to protect the physical and mental well-being of students. Yet, for those of us who grew up in that era, it is a stark reminder of a time when the boundaries of respect and discipline were enforced with a heavy, unmistakable hand. Let us wander back in time to a sweltering summer evening during the vibrant festival season. The distinct, sharp aroma of sulfur from fireworks was the true, unforgettable perfume of a Japanese summer. Decades ago, it was completely normal for groups of unsupervised children to buy cheap fireworks from the local sweet shop and set them off just about anywhere they pleased. We would gather in narrow, dark alleyways,
on the rough asphalt of empty parking lots, or right in the middle of tiny neighborhood parks. You could feel the rough, papery texture of the sparklers between your small fingers. We would crouch down in a tight circle, holding our breath, as we watched the fragile, trembling ball of brilliant fire spark and dance in the darkness, hoping against hope it would not drop to the ground. There were no warning signs, no requirement for municipal permits, and absolutely no security guards chasing us away.
It was a trusting era where children were expected to manage small dangers on their own. Today, setting off fireworks in most public parks and urban spaces is strictly prohibited by local ordinances due to severe noise and fire hazards. The night skies of our neighborhoods are much quieter now, but they lack that spontaneous, magical sparkle that once illuminated our childhood summers.
Do you remember the charming local neighborhood dogs that seemed to belong to everyone and no one at the exact same time? In the 1970s, it was incredibly common for families to let their dogs, usually a sturdy Shiba Inu or royal mix, roam freely outside without any leash whatsoever. You could hear the familiar, cheerful jingling of a metal collar as the dog trotted happily down the paved street. These free-roaming pets would visit the local butcher shop, hoping for a small scrap of meat, greet young children walking home from elementary school, and nap peacefully in the cool shade of a neighbor's persimmon tree. You could feel the coarse, warm fur of the dog as it leaned affectionately against your leg, silently asking for a quick scratch behind the ears.
When the evening warning chime echoed gently through the streets at 5 o'clock, the dogs simply knew it was time to wander back to their respective homes for a warm dinner. Today, strict animal control laws and strict leash mandates make it completely illegal to let a dog roam unrestrained in any Japanese town or city. The streets are undoubtedly cleaner and safer, but the charming sight of a neighborhood dog taking itself for an afternoon stroll is a beautiful memory forever lost to time. Let us step inside a bustling, smoke-filled tavern hidden in the narrow, winding alleyways of the city. The air inside is thick with the savory, mouth-watering scent of grilling chicken skewers and the sharp, clean aroma of spilled draft beer. Back in the day, one of the most beloved and highly anticipated dishes to order was thinly sliced, completely raw beef liver. The dish would arrive at the wooden table on a small ceramic plate, glistening brightly like dark red rubies, accompanied by a tiny dish of rich sesame oil mixed with coarse sea salt. You would use your wooden chopsticks to gently dip the cold, incredible redender meat into the fragrant oil. The texture was uniquely smooth, melting a fat restly on the tongue, offering a rich, metallic sweetness that paired up absolutely perfectly with a freezing cold grass of ragar. It was a celebrated delicacy that perfectly represented the hearty, unpretentious dining culture of the working class. However, due to severe health concerns and tragic food poisoning incidents, serving Robi Furiba was completely out, doding to 2012. It is now entirely a regolith of any restaurant in Japan to serve this once ubiquitous dish. We now sit in modern, heavily regulated taverns, nostalgically craving that forbidden taste of the vibrant, reckless Showa-era nightlife. Chink back to the feeling of absolute unbridled freedom on a crispy morning. In the early 1980s, before traffic rules was strictly tightened, you could jump onto a small 50 cubic centimeter moped, like the icon delivery bikes of the time, and ride confidently through the city without wearing a heavy helmet. You could feel the cool morning wind rushing wildly through your hair, and the warm sunshine beating down on your unprotected face. The high-pitched buzzing sound of the two-stroke engine would echo sharply off the concrete walls of the narrow residential streets. Delivery boys carrying incredibly tall stacks of noodle balls on their shoulders would weave gracefully through slow-moving traffic, their hair blowing wildly in the salty breeze. Young people would ride joyfully down to the beach, feeling deeply and physically connected to the beautiful environment around them without a suffocating piece of heavy plastic on their heads. It felt exactly like flying, just a few feet above the ground. Eventually, the traffic laws were amended to mandate helmets for all motorized two-wheelers to prevent tragic accidents. Today, riding a moped bareheaded is completely illegal and will result in immediate police intervention. We surrendered that raw, windswept freedom for the sake of survival, but the memory remains purely exhilarating. This next memory reflects a drastically different, almost unbelievable mindset of a bygone era. Let us recall the very late-night hours after a company drinking party finally wrapped up. In the 1970s and early 80s, the general attitude toward drinking and driving was shockingly lenient compared to the strict standards of today. A tired salaryman would stumble out of a late-night bar, smelling strongly of warm sake and grilled fish, and casually get into his sedan to drive home. If a local police officer happened to stop them, it was often brushed off with a gentle, polite warning to drive slowly and carefully, rather than an immediate arrest. You could hear the slow crunch of tires on gravel as people carefully navigated the quiet, utterly empty streets of their neighborhoods, relying on good luck and a very slow pace to get home safely. There was a dangerous but undeniable sense of informal leniency, a blind eye turned by a society that prioritized keeping up appearances. Today, Japan Lights Lee has some of the strictest drunk driving rows in the entire world, with massive fines, immediate loss of license, and serious of seijōren for the offender, making the old ways absolutely illegal. While we are incredibly grateful for the strict safety of modern roads, it is surreal to look back and realize how casually we once viewed such a perilous act. Let us remember the familiar, comforting, glowing presence of cigarette vending machines that proudly stood on almost every single street corner in Japan. They were brightly illuminated metal boxes, humming quietly to themselves in the damp, humid summer night. In the Showa era, these machines did not require any form of identification or verification. There was no digital card required to prove your age. A busy mother preparing dinner could simply hand a 500 yen coin to her 10-year-old son and casually ask him to run to the corner to buy a pack of cigarettes for his father. You could hear the heavy, metallic clank of the coins dropping into the coin slot, followed immediately by the satisfying thud of the cardboard pack falling into the plastic retrieval bin. You could smell the faint, lingering scent of stale tobacco right around the machine. It was completely normal for children to purchase tobacco because society operated on a rock-solid foundation of communal trust. It was widely understood that the child was running a helpful errand, not smoking. Today, selling tobacco to minors is strictly forbidden, and every machine is locked securely behind mandatory age verification technology. It is a highly necessary law to protect our youth, but it undeniably marked the end of those innocent, trusting neighborhood errands. Do you remember the delicate, enchanting melodies that used to spill softly from the wooden balconies of traditional Japanese houses in the early misty mornings? It was once a deeply cherished and respected hobby for older men to catch and keep the beautiful Japanese white-eyed bird as a beloved household pet. These tiny, vibrant green birds with distinctive white rings around their dark eyes were an absolute symbol of approaching spring. You could smell the sweet scent of fresh plum blossoms, which owners would lovingly gather from the trees to feed their captive birds. The intricate, hand-carved wooden and bamboo cages were stunning works of art themselves, and the pure sound of the birds singing their complex, trilling songs was considered one of the greatest acoustic joys of the era. Neighbors would even hold friendly singing contests to see whose wild bird had the most beautiful, clear voice. However, to rightfully protect declining native wildlife populations, the Japanese government heavily restricted and eventually completely banned the capture and keeping of these wild birds. Today, taking these beautiful creatures from the wild is completely illegal. The beautiful bamboo cages are now empty, silent antiques, and we must be to into the quiet forested, so you wish to hear that sweet, nostalgic song. Let us take a long-distance scenic journey on an express train before the era of the modern sealed bullet trains. The rhythmic clatter of the heavy steel tracks was a soothing, constant lullaby. When you traveled, buying a station lunchbox was the absolute highlight of the trip. These delicious meals came in beautiful, thin wooden boxes, always accompanied by hot green tea sold in charming, small clay pots. You could smell the mouth-watering aroma of soy sauce, cold seasoned rice, and grilled salmon. But what is truly shocking by today's civilized standards is what happened exactly after the meal was finished. It was entirely normal to simply open the heavy train window, feel the powerful rush of the country wind against your face, and toss the empty wooden box and clay pot right out onto the tracks. You could hear the satisfying, sharp shatter of the clay as it hit the hard stones far below. Because the materials were completely natural wood and clay, they simply returned harmlessly to the earth. Today, throwing anything out of a moving train is strictly illegal, considered incredibly dangerous and a sign of terrible manners. Train windows are now permanently sealed shut for air conditioning and maximum safety. We certainly miss the fresh breeze on our faces, but keeping our beautiful countryside completely free of litter is undoubtedly a much better path for the future. Think back to the vibrant, wildly caustic atmosphere of a local shooting festival in the 1960s. Amid the colorful bus rings, tarred sellings, sweet cotton candy, and bags of dirty goldfish, you would often find the charismatic, loud street vendors selling completely unregulated traditional medicines. These traveling salesmen would set up small, precarious wooden stands filled with mysterious powders, dried roots, and dark, bitter-looking tonics. You could smell the pungent, incredibly earthy aroma of ginseng, dried snake, and strong herbal camphor floating thickly in the humid night air. The vendor would speak in a fast, rhythmic, hypnotic chant, confidently promising that his homemade concoction could instantly cure everything from a simple stomachache to chronic, deep fatigue. We would hold the rough paper envelopes carefully in our hands, trusting the ancient wisdom passed down through generations. There were no clinical trials, no detailed ingredient labels, and absolutely no government oversight. Today, the pharmaceutical laws in Japan are incredibly strict, making the unregulated sale of homemade medicinal tonics entirely illegal to protect public health. The mystical, fragrant medicine stalls have completely vanished from our festivals, taking a magical piece of our folklore with them forever. Let us travel back in time to the bustling domestic terminal of the airport in the days before the world grew so anxious and fearful. The atmosphere inside was incredibly relaxed, smelling faintly of sweet jet fuel and the elegant floral perfume of beautifully dressed stewardesses. In the 1970s, boarding a domestic flight in Japan was almost exactly as simple and casual as boarding a local commuter train. There were absolutely no metal detectors, no X-ray machines to scan your luggage, and certainly no invasive pat-downs. You could literally walk into the terminal, buy a simple paper ticket, and stroll right up to the boarding gate, holding a large, completely unchecked bag. Families would walk with you all the way out to the windy tarmac to wave a fond goodbye, watching the massive propellers or jet engines roar violently to life. You could carry almost anything on board, from heavy glass bottles of liquor to large pieces of sporting equipment, without a single question being asked. The sound of the boarding announcements felt like an open invitation to a grand, carefree adventure. Today, strict international aviation laws make this kind of unrestricted movement absolutely illegal and impossible. We endure the long, tedious security lines because we must, but we often long for those golden days when flying was a graceful, deeply trusting, and seamless experience. Do you remember the dazzling, almost blinding nighttime spectacle of the decorated transport trucks that once proudly ruled the dark highways of Japan? In the 1980s, these massive, heavy transport trucks were entirely transformed into rolling works of glowing art. They were covered from top to bottom in hundreds of bright neon lights, shiny chrome visors, and elaborate, hand-painted murals of fierce dragons and dramatic actors. But it was not just the visual spectacle that captivated us. It was the sheer, unregulated, earth-shaking noise. You could literally feel the deep, chest-rattling vibration of the modified diesel engines as they passed by. The drivers would install custom, deafening air horns that sounded exactly like a massive ship entering a busy harbor, blaring them loudly to greet each other in the dark. The strong smell of diesel exhaust and hot asphalt followed them everywhere they went. It was a spectacular, beautiful display of blue-collar pride and wild rebellion. Today, strict vehicle inspection laws and severe noise pollution ordinances have made these heavily modified trucks and their roaring horns largely illegal for normal street use. The highways are much darker and quieter now, and we miss the thrilling, rebellious roar of those glowing mechanical beasts tearing through the silent night. Let us step inside a typical, fast-paced corporate office during the absolute peak of the Japanese economic bubble. The air inside is incredibly thick with the scent of cheap instant coffee, messy carbon paper, and endless, thick clouds of cigarette smoke. The continuous sound of heavy mechanical typewriters and the rapid clacking of wooden abacuses created a relentless, driving rhythm of commerce. In those days, there were virtually no legally enforced caps on working hours whatsoever. It was completely normal and entirely expected for salarymen to work late into the night, willingly missing the very last train home. Instead of paying for a hotel, exhausted workers would simply unroll a sleeping bag directly under their metal desks or sleep awkwardly on a couple of pushed-together chairs. You could feel the cold, hard linoleum floor against your back as you rested for just a few short hours before the morning sun crept through the blinds. There was a profound, deeply shared sense of sacrifice, a firm belief that giving your entire life to the company would help rebuild the nation. Today, sweeping labor reforms and incredibly strict laws regarding overtime hours make such relentless, unregulated working conditions illegal, aiming to prevent death by overwork. We are thankful that the younger generation has a healthier balance, but we cannot help but respect the fierce, burning dedication of that bygone era. Think back to the deep, beautiful communal bonds that were forged during neighborhood street festivals and community sports days. It was a wonderful time when the neighborhood association felt exactly like one massive extended family. One of the absolute greatest joys was the shared food. Older housewives would bring out massive, heavy wooden tubs of homemade pickled radishes and hand-rolled rice balls wrapped in dark seaweed. There were no plastic wrappers, no sanitary gloves, and absolutely no printed expiration dates. You could smell the sharp, tangy aroma of the vinegar and the savory, rich scent of homemade miso soup simmering in a giant iron pot. A neighbor would simply hand you a rice ball with their bare hands, and you would eat it with absolute trust and deep gratitude. The soft texture of the warm salted rice was literally the taste of pure community love. Today, string and food sanitation, laws and strict health department regulations make it completely illegal to distribute unpacked homemade food to the general public at such events without commercial licenses. Everything must be sterile, wrapped tightly in plastic, and prepared in certified commercial kitchens. We have traded the warm, loving touch of a neighbor's hospitality for clinical safety, losing a precious, intimate connection in the process.
Finally, let us reflect deeply on a memory that truly highlights the immense, almost unbelievable feeling of safety that once completely blanketed our society. Imagine a chilly, dark winter evening in the 1980s. A busy mother needs to run quickly into the local supermarket to grab some green onions and tofu for a warm dinner. Without a single second thought, she would leave her young children alone in the car, leaving the engine running smoothly to keep the warm heater on. You could hear the soft, rhythmic idling of the engine and the faint, tinny sound of a popular song playing on the radio. The children would sit comfortably on the plush, velour seats, watching the thick condensation build up on the cold windows, feeling completely safe and utterly secure in the dark parking lot. And please, stay with me until the very end, because the final memory we will share reveals just how profoundly our sense of community, safety, and trust has changed over the decades. As we slowly open our eyes and return to the fast-paced present day, we must acknowledge a very profound truth. We do not necessarily miss the stinging cigarette smoke in the train cars, nor do we genuinely wish for the dangerous, unregulated roads of the past. What we truly miss is our youth. We deeply miss the profound feeling of time stretching out endlessly before us, and that deep, unbreakable bond of trust we shared with our neighbors. The modern world has grown much safer, cleaner, and much more heavily regulated, but a small, beautiful piece of our wild, trusting hearts was left behind in the Showa era. If this journey brought a tear to your eye, or a warm, familiar smile to your face, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this video to help keep our precious memories alive. Now, I want to hear from you. What is one specific, cherished memory from your youth that would be considered completely impossible or illegal in today's world? Please share your personal stories in the comments below and let us remember those golden days together.